my spoiler review or spoiler discussion of Deadpool 2. Now, if you haven't seen the movie yet, don't watch this video. I put a spoiler-free review out 2 days ago. This one is intended to dive into all the specifics, talk through plot points, so you know exactly what I'm talking about. And the way I'm going to do this video is that it's not like my normal videos that are intended to be nice, concise, short. This one is going to be a long review. I don't know how long it's going to be. I thought my Infinity War review was going to be 25 minutes. I went for an hour. Maybe this one will be 25 minutes. Maybe this one will be an hour long. And I'm doing it in a single take, so it'll be a little bit more freeform, a little bit more my personality shining through as I just kind of talk through it, dissect the different pieces, and give you my full thoughts on the movie from beginning to end. That's how this is going to work. So if you haven't seen the movie yet, this is your final warning before I start diving into plot points. You got 3, 2, 1. We're going to dive into some spoilers, and hey, they killed Vanessa in this movie. Crazy stuff. Anyway, go ahead and tell me down below in the comment section, what did you think about this movie? Go crazy with the spoilers. Let's dive into the specifics. This is freeform. Go crazy for it. The way I'm going to structure this is I'm actually going to kind of walk back through my spoiler-free review of the movie, kind of give my thoughts on it, and then I'll kind of give a more abbreviated take on the movie. Not abbreviated because it's going to be long, but kind of walk through the plot points of the movie. I thought I'd structure things that way. With that said, let's get started talking about the good. And what I said before that I absolutely loved about this movie is that it is just absolutely jam-packed with entertainment value. They go for it when it comes to the humor, the fourth wall breaking, the culture references. And one of the things I loved is the Celine Dion song that they used for the opening credits. They put a music video out beforehand, and I was like, are they going to use this in the movie? Like, where are they going with this? And then you watch the movie, and that song plays over the opening credits, and it's like a James Bond thing with all sorts of stuff with Deadpool dancing, the flash dance thing where he's leaning back and they pour the bullets on him. That's one of the movie trailers. That's in the movie. I just absolutely loved that. But this movie goes for it when it comes to trying to entertain. And so, you know, you get Deadpool walking around with like little legs and his little baby butt showing, all sorts of things like that. This movie goes for it when it comes to that sort of thing. Likewise, it goes for it with the action, and they find little ways to be creative and clever throughout the movie. And so they bring Domino in, and they actually play up this idea that she's lucky, and so have action sequences designed around the fact that she's in the middle of a car crash and somehow everything goes right. So she's not injured in it at all, or even was thrown from a vehicle. There just happens to be inflatables there. They find clever things to do with the mutant abilities throughout the entire movie, or with, you know, when they have Deadpool getting ripped in half. You can't normally show that level of violence in a comic book movie. This movie you can, because he can be healed and come back from that happening. Or in the prison riot sequence, there's a scene in it where, you know, he's got the necklace on and falls through a table and gets his back broken, and you're like watching it just, just kind of like watching the intensity of some of the stuff as he just slowly heals from a broken back in the sequence. I also talked about before how the character interactions are great, and that's true before. You got our taxi driver Mohinder plays maybe a little bit more prominent role in this movie as he's trying to become a superhero, and from the get-go he's in it. And they have him sitting in his taxi. It's in the trailer a little bit where Deadpool runs around the corner and jumps through the window, and he's sitting there and he's listening to Tony Robbins. I loved that little detail that he's listening to Tony Robbins about confidence as this kind of kicks things off. But really all the characters, and they just have vibrant characters sprinkled throughout all of this. And whether, you know, Colossus is this guy that has this moral compass. They find little ways, like, you know, at the end of the movie where Deadpool's dying, that, you know, his dying request is to get Colossus to say a bad word. That, like, those are just amazing little touches of entertainment, little elements to how do you balance Deadpool? Who's the person that you want to have with him that would have fun shenanigans? A very moral, religious Colossus. That's great. That loves rules, and so he's reading through the X-Men manual for proper behavior. That's amazing. And then bringing in someone like Cable that's just dead serious, and he's not making, cracking wisecracks in the typical sense. He's like an action movie character playing against wisecracking Deadpool. All this plays really nicely. Another thing I said, and we'll dive into this when we go into the full discussion of the movie, I love that it's a different type of story. Because the original movie, if you told it linear, is a very straightforward comic book origin story. It's a very straightforward action movie in a lot of ways, because if you told it linear, it's just you see a guy in his normal life and what he was like. Something, he gets sick, tries to get healed, he's wronged in the process, and he goes for revenge. And the girlfriend gets kidnapped in the mix. That's a very straightforward, very typical action movie plot. It's a superhero type origin story. It's a revenge story. And so for this movie, and there's a very clear villain in it. There's the bad guy that you want taken out. There's the henchman in the mix. All of it. Typical. This movie, it's not like that. The way the trailers present it, it's that Cable's a bad guy. But he's not really the bad guy. And we kind of knew that going into it. Cable's not really going to be the bad guy of this movie. And there's the kid that Deadpool's trying to save. That's not really a good guy. He's kind of the bad guy. Like, he's the bad guy in the story in a lot of ways. But his role in the story isn't as the main protagonist. He's as the person that we're trying to protect. And so the closest you have some actual bad guys in it, whether you're talking about Juggernaut being an actual bad guy, but he's really more of a henchman in his role in the story. And then you have the evil mutant orphanage and the headmaster there. That's a real villain in it, but he's not the villain of the movie. And so that's a very interesting way to do a story that has real conflict. It's not confused. It's not messy in understanding people's motivations or why they're doing. No, it's all very clear. You know why things are happening. It has forward momentum. And in a lot of ways, there's interesting dynamics to it because the person that Deadpool's trying to save is an innocent child of sorts right now, but he's not innocent in the future. Therefore, that's interesting conflict dynamics, tension, and all of that. That's very different and more complex than what we got before. So I appreciated all of those types of aspects. As we'll get into it a little bit, might be a little bit too much plot in the movie in other senses, but the main plot line to it, I really appreciate what they did. And also on the positives, that they find a new way to give the movie a strong emotional core. In that very early on, they kill off Vanessa and establish this kind of idea of family. And the fact that Deadpool wanted kids and he's talking about kids in that, so then the story plays out and he has to protect a kid. He's forming a new family. He's forming new relationships where this Vanessa was that kind of anchor and core before. There's a lot of emotional resonance in it for all of the carefree nature of the story and a lack of reverence for things and sending up the genre. There's real emotions in it. Things that you actually care about, the way things kind of play out. From there, we'll move on to the mixed aspects of the movie. And what I said before kind of goes back to things that I mentioned early on, is that this movie just kind of goes for it. I mean, it just throws everything up at the screen, every joke, pop culture reference idea that they have. And it can be a bit much when it's going so hard to entertain and put all these elements in there and have emotion. It can feel a little bit like what ideas did you turn down? Like when you had the writer's room and people were like, we could, have his legs are cut off and then the Celine Dion and then there's time travel in the mix and the girl gets killed off and we're trying to save this person. There's more time travel later on and then we'll retcon things later on. We'll throw an X-Force into the mix. Like it kind of goes for so much with the jokes and the humor and everything that you're always entertained. There's always something to keep you interested. I can't imagine someone saying this movie was boring. Like that would be a very weird takeaway. Like, I was bored by it. I don't know how you're bored. You might hate it. You might be offended by it. It might be too stressful because there's so much going on. But you're not bored. And so I call that kind of mix, just how much they kind of throw out. From there, move on to the bad. And the big thing I mentioned about the bad, and I've had some discussions with some people in the comment sections and on my X-Men ranking on this one. The big bad is that I said that there's too much plot. And there's too much kind of going on for what the actual central storyline is, both what's presented in the trailer and what really is kind of the plot of the movie. There's a lot of other things that are thrown in the mix that I think are a bit too much for the length, for the type of movie that they're trying to do, and they could have dialed that back. And so some people kind of like, oh, you were confused by the story? You thought it was messy? It's like, no, I wasn't confused. I didn't think it was messy. It all ties together properly. I'm not saying it's poorly structured. I'm not saying there's a lack of momentum. I'm not saying, well, what's happening? Why? No, it's not that. It's that there's so many plot deviations and steps along the way for the way they did things that it just rushes through so many different things that it was like, I think we could have slowed this down, removed a few of these elements, and it would have worked a little better. So the movie starts off and we learn immediately that he's suicidal, and then it goes back in time and we see that he's been taking out mobsters left and right all over the world. And then comes back and find out that they want to have a kid, and so that they're trying to have a baby, and they're talking about kids' names. And so then she's killed, and then he's suicidal and he blames himself. And so then he actually tries to kill himself, as we saw before. And so then Colossus comes and saves him, and he tries to become an X-Men, have redemption by being an X-Men, and he's a trainee in the X-Men. So then they go on a mission to try and save this kid that's freaked out in a mutant orphanage, and Deadpool isn't a good X-Men and takes someone out, and so he gets arrested. Like, this is just the first 20 minutes of the movie. And Cable hasn't tied into it yet. Our main plot line about Cable's trying to kill a kid hasn't tied in, and we've already had a main character killed off. That's not really what the movie's about, but that's kind of the emotional undercurrent of the character arc in the movie. That's the subtext type stuff of the movie, but it's not the main plot line that she killed off. It's just a thing that kind of happens. And then we have this plot line about Deadpool becoming an X-Men. That's not really at all a plot line in the movie. Like, that's not what the movie's about. It's about him trying to figure out what's next, and so he kind of tries that. But so it's just adding so many different things into it. So he goes to prison, and so now it's a movie about prison, and then there's a prison break in the movie, and then he's going to form the X-Force, but it's not really about forming the X-Force. So like the trailers in particular presented as Deadpool forms X-Force to try and stop Cable. That's not what the movie's about. Like, X-Force is a small part of this movie, but that's what the movie does, is it just kind of throws so many plot lines at you. And then, and so I mentioned in my previous review that the trailers don't really give the whole movie away, but it gives away the middle of the movie. Like, you take 30 minutes into it, and you cut the first 40 minutes and the last 40 minutes, that middle hour and 20 minutes or so, whatever that would be, the middle hour, it gives that away. You don't have a very good idea about, okay, there seems to be a prison, these Cable's going after the kid, but all this stuff with Vanessa and suicide's not in there, and all this stuff about this evil orphanage, and we have to stop him, like, that's not in there in Juggernaut. And so that's a lot of plot to have in a movie that's pretty straightforward in that it's kind of Looper, it's kind of the Terminator in what the plot is, and then all this other stuff thrown into it. That's what I'm saying, that there's kind of too much going on. From there, the other thing I said about the plot is that elements to it are very predictable. As soon as we're introduced to this kid and he's angry, you pretty quickly go, okay, this kid's gonna grow up and he's gonna be evil. Like, he clearly, there's something not right with this kid, and so I see where this is going and how things are going to tie together. And, oh, Headmaster is still there. The school's still there. Okay, this is going to tie later into the movie. So, and then as you're watching it, you know, okay, Cable's not going to stay evil. And if Cable's trying to kill this kid, something's going to happen with the kid. And this is pretty clear something's going on here with the kid. And then something goes on with the kid, and Cable's not actually evil. Cable's trying to stop someone that turns into really evil. And you kind of figure all this out, and there's stuff in it where, you know, they try to make up for being obvious in the foreshadowing and writing, like, there's always a bigger guy in the basement or something like that. And then they say, foreshadowing, and look at the camera and go, yeah, but you really are being predictable and being lazy, and you're foreshadowing what you're doing right now. And so you kind of go, okay, I see what's going to happen here. The kid's going to tie into that, and there's going to be some reveal as to who this villain is, and it's going to be interesting. Oh, it's Juggernaut. Okay, that makes sense that he'd be the big guy that they would get. And then you move towards the end of the movie, and they have the line where Cable goes, I've only got 2 charges, one to get here and one to get back, and Deadpool looks at the camera and goes, that's kind of lazy writing. And you kind of go, that is kind of lazy writing, but they're trying to find an excuse for setting up things that are pretty obvious. And so you kind of quickly, as you're starting to watch where the third act goes, you go, oh, Cable's going to use his charge to save whatever is going to happen here. Cable's going to have to use his charge to save someone else, and he's not going to go back in time. And as soon as you see his teddy bear start to change, you go, oh, he's going to use his charge to save Deadpool. That's when, I don't know how that's going to work exactly, but you know what's going to happen. There's a lot of things like that are just really predictable. You can easily start to piece together things that are happening. And maybe it's, I didn't used to be like that. I didn't used to be the person that could watch a movie and pretty quickly kind of see where things are going. But now that I watch a ton of movies and I watch them thinking about how am I going to talk about them, I much more quickly notice when I'm watching a movie and they introduce something that is like, why are we spending so much time talking about a coin? Like, it's very well established early in the movie, Deadpool hands her a coin, and then he still has the coin, and then Cable takes the coin, and you're like, okay, how's this coin going to play back into it? Because we wouldn't be talking about this coin so much if there wasn't something about to happen with this. And then it ties into this kind of third act twist and where they kind of save the day on a few things. Also said in my review that there's a lot of, the movie is just jam-packed with action movie tropes. So the obvious one, the main plot line of it, it's Looper and it's Terminator. It's just very obviously go back in time to kill the kid before he can do something worse. So we've seen this plot before. That's not a big in and of itself bother me too much because they have so much kind of fun with it and the way they tie it, they're doing something different and interesting with it. So in and of itself, that wouldn't bother me so much, but there's several other ones in there too, where our hero early in the movie, his girl is killed and this establishes his arc throughout the movie. And you go, okay, that's a pretty distinct cliche action movie trope right there to kill off the girl. And then even things like that there's a prison sequence in the movie that takes up not a terribly large chunk of the movie, but we go off to a prison. Well, what do you have when you have a short prison sequence in a movie? Well, you have people trying to make friends. There's a fight in the cafeteria. There's a riot breaks out for some reason, and our character breaks out during the riot. Like, these are just kind of action movie type tropes that happen. Like, I was thinking about it, I was like, this is so familiar. Oh yeah, this happened in Face Off. Like, this is the sort of thing around the same point in time in that movie. Same sort of ingredients kind of play out. So there's several different things like that, and the movie occasionally tries to call it out as it's happening. But at a certain point in time, that's just, it doesn't make it clever if you're just our cover up for being lazy and our writing is just to make a joke about it. At a certain point in time, that just becomes lazy writing in itself to make the to call out the laziness with a joke. It's lazy itself once you've already done it. And then the other trope in here that's just, I had some people also getting into me with me on this one, is that when they jump out of the helicopter plane, whatever it was, with the parachutes, Thunderstruck starts playing. Like the song that they used in Iron Man 2 when he jumps out of a plane, the one that they use in every movie when there's a sequence like this. I mean, it is, along with 2 or 3 other AC/DC songs, the song that you use for these types of moments, and they play it straight. Like I was expecting, as soon as the song starts to playing and Deadpool's like, hey, hit the music. I don't know if he said it that time like he did the other times in the movie, but whatever he does to hit the music, I was waiting for him to like turn to the camera and say, yeah, we're ripping off Iron Man 2 or something, like make some joke like that once again would be calling it out, but at least you could make some clever comment on it. Or you could say something like, yeah, it's Iron Man 2. But this song's so good for moments like this. And that's what people said in the comment section. But the song is perfect for those types of moments. Like, but there's other songs that are also great for moments like this. And if you're just using the same one that's always used in action movies for things like this, it's just cliche at a certain point. It's you can't just always do that song. So anyway, that was kind of my take on it. So that's a version of my review that I did before where I talked through the specific plot points. It looks like we're 21 minutes into, they're about 20 minutes into on you guys' time since I started recording before you guys started watching, because I don't show you the dead time at the beginning of my videos. From there, I'll kind of walk through the plot of the movie. I've already kind of done that, so I don't want to do too much, but I want to talk about all the things that you might want my thoughts on throughout this entire movie. That was kind of given big picture with examples. This is the walkthrough on the specific aspects. So the movie starts off, and the first thing happens in the movie. This is actually the reason that I didn't want to start off talking about the movie this way, so I'm going to go negative right from the get-go, and I didn't want to go negative because I actually like the movie quite a bit. The movie kicks off, and it kind of scrolls down, and it has Wolverine on the cross, like the X-cross thing that's at the last shot where Logan ended, and it breaks into making jokes about the movie Logan, and we're going to top Logan in this one, and I didn't dig it. It kind of got a chuckle out of me, but for the most part, I was like, ooh, I hope the movie's not like this, because it's a joke to me that I don't think works or plays particularly well after now. And what I mean by that is, for us movie fans, for us X-Men fans, for us people that follow this X-Men franchise, the last X-Men movie we saw in the theater was Logan. The last thing that happened was this event that happened with Hugh Jackman's done, Logan's dead. And so then jump forward, this joke plays right now because that's where we're coming from. That's like kind of fresh on our mind, like, oh, they killed Logan, and we're picking this. Oh, this movie has themes about death too, as well. And it just seemed like an odd joke that won't age particularly well. I don't think, or it'll feel kind of odd. It plays so much to this moment in time and where we're kind of at versus in the X-Men franchise linearly about them playing out, as opposed to in the future when you just, hey, let's pop in Deadpool 2, and the movie kicks off with a joke referencing where the X-Men movies are at that point in time. Is like that seems a bit odd to me. So it plays out, and Deadpool kind of blows himself up. And I thought this was kind of interesting to kick things off, somewhat because Ryan Reynolds has been, before the movie came out for a couple of weeks, had been screwing with people. And he was saying things like, I don't know if we're going to do a Deadpool 3. You know, there's a lot of things going on with the mergers, and maybe the character needs to be killed off. And he'd been saying this in interviews for 2 or 3 weeks leading up to the release of the movie. And then the movie starts off and it's like they're blowing him to pieces. Like, oh, I love what Ryan Reynolds was just doing, knowing what's in the movie, not wanting to spoil it, but at the same time spoiling it a little bit plays nicely into messing with people's expectations for the movie. So I dug that part about it, where the movie kind of kicks off and things. So it rewinds back, and we do this montage of Deadpool taking people out. And actually, I kind of dug that, just kind of seeing Deadpool's been up to things and taking people out. And that's, you know, some fun things you can do with that, and showing Deadpool as this guy that doesn't care about getting blown to pieces and shot up by people as in these action sequences was a ton of fun. And then picking up where he's like watching his watch, like, oh, I gotta get back to my girlfriend. It's my anniversary. Takes off, jumps into the taxi. And as I mentioned before, I love that Tony Robbins is what Mohinder's listening to in there. And he talks about kind of picking up on the joke from the previous one of the taxi driver killing the guy in the trunk, or I guess they said that in the movies. They actually killed the guy, but he was meant to just kidnap him. But I thought there was a lot of fun little things in that, and that there's this ongoing joke throughout the movie that Deadpool, for some reason, won't let him become his superhero and just keeps writing him off. And then Peter walks in and is like, oh yeah, sure, you could join the team, but he won't let his buddy. And then once again, that kind of payoff at the very end of the movie that kind of comes with that. So he goes home and they exchange anniversary gifts, and he opens his, and it's her birth control, which is a little bit too, as it opened up, I was like, oh, okay, I guess it is a Deadpool movie. I should expect these types of jokes in it. But even there's even something like they found this way to have a very crass type relationship between the two of them, while at the same time having very family values, love, monogamy, compassion, like these types of things for each other, that makes for a very interesting dynamic between the two of them. It's just fascinating the way they've crafted this to where you could play a moment like this where birth control's and they're like, we're going to have a kid, and it works. And so from there, of course, they watch the movies, and they establish this ongoing joke throughout the movie with the Bette Midler? Barbra Streisand movie that they're watching in the song, and how same as the Frozen. I dug that quite a bit. And then people break in, fight scene kind of happens, and she gets taken out and killed. And I didn't like they play out the emotion of it. It has obviously is very key to the movie, but as a plot point in the movie, the way it just kind of happens, if you just stop and think about it, Deadpool's just at his home. People just show up and kill them. He kills them, and then we just kind of move on from it. And it never. I mean, it's kind of I guess it's kind of a Deus Ex Machina type moment. I always mispronounce. I'm sure I said that wrong, but it just kind of happens that people happen to break in at this particular moment, kill her, leave, and we don't go anywhere. Like, who sent them? Who was this? Was it the guys from? I guess it's the guys from the beginning that was chasing him. They chased him home. Like, what is that? How is this? Like, it just kind of ignores the simple fact, even though it's this very important thing that happens. So I didn't particularly like the way they decided to do this really big, important thing that's at the emotional core of the movie that establishes Deadpool's character arc throughout it. So that specific detail that happened is what I was crazy about. And somewhat when I talk about the movie having too many plot lines and moving too quickly, that's kind of what I'm talking about, where it just kind of has to have these things happen because we have to move on. Like if you're going to have a prison sequence and he becomes an X-Men and we got this time travel story and then we have to get to the real bad guys at the end of the movie and want to put X-Force into it, you can't linger on the fact of like establishing who are these people that are chasing after them. Why does it matter? Why would they break into his home? And what you can't linger on that. So it just kind of happens and we move on to the next thing. And that's where there's some story kind of issues for me with the movie. So from there, he blows himself up because he's suicidal. And we get this very fun sequence where Colossus takes him to the X Mansion. And there's all kinds of little things that kind of go on and little funny jokes. And he's riding around in Professor X's wheelchair. And just tons of fun to just like the irreverence to it all. And that you just, if you put a scene in any other X-Men movie where any other character just hops into Professor Xavier's wheelchair and starts spinning around in circles, it would just feel so out of place, like, oh, what is going on here? But it fits perfectly into what this movie is. And then I love these walking through the hallways and like, we can't even splurge a little bit on the rest of the X-Men, and they show a door close and the entire X-Men first class cast is in the movie. Loved all those little cameo type moments that they put in the movie. So he becomes a trainee X-Men and they send him on a mission. And once again, not too crazy about how this plays out because like it's trying to set up where the movie's going and the different pieces, and Deadpool has to behave like Deadpool, but Deadpool's behaving a little bit too dumb. He always acts, there's always a stupidity, irreverent, oh yeah, that's Deadpool. But the way this sequence plays out at this orphanage and he's trying to talk the kid down and then suddenly like, I'll just shoot this guy in the head while all these police are right here. The way all of it just kind of happens, it felt too much like we have to write him to be so far dumb the dumb factor because we have to set up a scenario where he's arrested and loses his powers. So I did not like the way the scene played out. The general idea of the scene, totally fine with it. As a general plot direction for things, I like there's a lot of good ideas in it. The way it plays out, not so much. And once again, going back to story issues and moving so quickly through things that you just kind of have to have Deadpool be dumb to get arrested to make some of this play out. So he goes to prison, and I dug the prison sequence quite a bit. Whether you're talking about the prison wallet and this, like the personality that they crafted for this kid who like knows about prison and is getting in fights with bigger guys and they're punching him in the face. He's like, prison wallet, I came prepared. Pulls a shank out of his butt. I mean, like funny types. Like I just love some of the stuff that tied that in. And then even stuff that you wouldn't think about immediately that, Deadpool without his superpowers just starts dying of cancer. And so he's just like telling this kid, don't make friends with me, I'm dying of cancer. And it's like this very morbid kind of direction that has weight to it. Like it works because Deadpool's irreverent, but he's also heartbroken over losing his person. So he would kind of be like this. And he's still kind of trying to be friendly to the kid, but not at the same time. So all of the prison fight stuff and the way it plays out, like some great little sequences that I totally dug about the way it plays out. And so Cable shows up around this point in time. I don't remember exactly where it tied into it and everything. Cable shows up, walks up to a couple guys drinking some beers, and I don't know who one of them was, but one of them I was watching was like, is that Alan Tudyk? Like, what is that really him? And I couldn't hear him say lines, and it was nighttime, and you could see him directly, but it was just he's so underused in the movie that I didn't think it was him. And then in the credits, it was Alan Tudyk. It was like they put in another one of these nice little cameos in there that totally dug what you're doing there. So Cable goes into the prison to try and kill the kid, even though our first impression that he's going after Deadpool, which that's also kind of an action movie trope. That sort of, what are you trying to do? It's actually in the first X-Men movie. That the thing of there's two people next to each other, and we think that they're going after our main character, but they're actually going over the other person. That's in the first X-Men movie, where the whole movie they keep showing up trying to get Rogue, but Wolverine just happens to be there. And so later in the movie, whenever they kind of finally grab her, it says, "Why do you think?" Wolverine's like, "What do you want with me? Why are you doing this?" And they're like, "Well, I don't want you. I want her." That's kind of what plays out in this movie as well. Kind of same little reversal that we knew from the trailer was what was going on inside the movie. So this plays out a great sequence. Great. The way Cable's action was handled was really nice because he's not going to be super stylish in what he's doing. So he's just kind of an action guy, and it's handled really nicely. And he's got this tech stuff shield that the way it was visualized, I dug the style to it. And he's got this gun that kind of flies back to him, and they use that really nicely. So I dug all that stuff. And then you have Deadpool in it that doesn't have his powers, and so he can actually die. And I don't remember specifically all the ways that plays out, but whenever that sequence happens where he jumps off the level and falls down and his back snaps and you just see him leaning back, like a whole theater goes, oh, just brutality of the way that it plays out. So he keeps fighting Cable and goes into the tunnel. The kid overhears a little bit as Deadpool talks down like, I don't care about this kid. Feels once again a little bit action movie cliche that the kid that's trying to reach out to the main person hears what he really was. He's talking to someone else and gets his feeling hurt and so runs off. Type of thing that we've seen before. So they escape or go in their different directions. The kid decides to make friends with Juggernaut because Deadpool gave him that advice to find the biggest guy and make friends with him. Heavy foreshadowing happening, and so then we see this type happen in the prison. On the other area to it, Deadpool decides, I know what I need to do. I need to save this kid from Cable. So he decides, I'm going to form X-Force. Very fun sequence, the way all of it kind of plays out, funny with the interviews and type stuff. And I don't know, was it the Invisible? That wasn't the Invisible Man. Whatever it was. I blank on his name. Even the way that plays out, the joke was like really, really funny. So then they just come up with a plan. We're going to parachute down and save the day. Peter gets nervous and he's like, hey, the wind's blowing pretty hard these days. Is this actually such a good idea to jump out of this with? And Deadpool's like, I'll never let anything happen to you. And then our cliche song Thunderstruck starts playing. They jump out. The wind is really bad. And I'm torn. This is pretty mixed on the way this plays out, because as a gag, it's hilarious to just watch. You know, they should jump out and Terry Crews just hits a bus, and then the it guy, Pennywise, lands, and you're watching and you see a wood chipper and you go, oh no, and lands in a wood chipper. Peter runs over to save him, and then we heard that he spits acid, and we're like, we don't need to see that. And then it finally happens as he's dying, it vomits acid onto Peter, and you just see his body start to melt away. You're like, oh dear, this is horrible as we're watching it. / really funny. So I'm torn on it because I don't know if I would feel different about it. Oh yeah, and then our invisible guy's flying, hits power cords, and it just flashes real quick, and you go, was that Brad Pitt? Did they just have Brad Pitt show up just like that on the screen? And you watch the credits, and it was Brad Pitt playing the character. So I'm torn on it because it was really funny. And I don't know, but I don't like that the movie marketed it. Like, the interviews are featured prominently, and one of the trailers very heavily plays their interviews, and then we see them parachuting. We see Peter, and we're like, haha, well, X-Force, this is going to be a ton of fun. And if you compare the amount of screen time in the trailers to their amount of screen time in the movie, they are way overrepresented in the trailer. And in a way that makes you feel cheated, not in the set, like, Infinity War had some stuff that was in the trailer that wasn't in the movie, and it was intended to kind of fake you out so you couldn't guess and type things. And I'm fine with that. I didn't mind what they did because it was intended to hide spoilers, and so there were twists and turns. And I could potentially see showing Hulk in the trailer in the final act being misleading in a negative way, but it didn't bother me. Because they didn't show him doing a bunch of other stuff. They didn't show him in action. They just showed him in this one shot. Here, they heavily showed almost all of Terry Crews' stuff in the movie. They show almost all of Peter's stuff in the movie, besides their fate. That, I'm not comfortable with that. And so I don't know if they had much more underplayed some of this stuff and it wasn't so prominently featured in the trailer with X-Force, he's going to put a team together. If I would feel differently if it was like this nice little camera, like, wait, Terry Crews is in this? Wait, is it Bill Skarsgård is in this movie? That's awesome that they're in it. And then they're killed off 2 minutes later, 3 minutes later, whatever. I bet I probably would have responded better if it didn't feel like a bit of a trick with what they did with the trailers. So from there, it goes into this great action sequence where Domino has good luck, and so she keeps doing things and everything works out perfectly for her. Doug, totally the way that plays out. Cable's getting in on the action. A bunch of really kind of cool shots with the way it's handled. You got the guy that did John Wick, and so very fun in the way. I forgot to mention this, the opening credits. I loved the line in their angle for the opening credits was, they really killed her off. This really happened. From the writers that decided to kill her off. And then it's the director one, it says, from one of the two guys that decided to kill John Wick's dog. I was like, this is hilarious. Anyway, back to right now. So it's a guy that knows how to handle action, and you see that very much so in this action sequence as they're chasing through the city and all the kind of things that kind of happen inside of it. And you get to the latter portion of it, the kid lets Juggernaut out, Deadpool goes to fight him, rips him in half, and then the kid runs off with Juggernaut to go and have their shenanigans. So this brings us to our next sequence where Deadpool's having his regroup moment with his guys, and he's sitting there, and the sequence plays out where he's got the kid legs, and this is one of those moments where I don't know if I think that's brilliant or if I think that's just going way too far with it, because they just play out this joke so intensely on so many different levels, because it's just funny to see him with little legs, and then he's sitting there with no underwear on. They're making the basic instinct jokes, and then Cable shows up. They have their back and forth banter with everything kind of going on, and then he stands up to walk, and you have the cute little baby butt on Ryan Reynolds, and it all plays out. It's just disturbing in the one sense, hilarious in another sense. Can't decide, is this too much? Is it just we're going to go to 11 on everything to make it like, just, we have to put entertainment value. And so you're laughing, but you're like, it keep happening. I'm not quite sure. Like, would it have been a little bit better if they went with a little bit classier model and just play the best jokes and don't overplay the hand? Or is it better because they so overplay some of these hands that it's brilliant? I'm not really sure. Maybe on second viewing, I bet I'll more distinctly go, oh no, the excess, let's take it to 11, that's what makes this work. Or I'll kind of go, no, this doesn't work. They're playing this out too much. So they form this new team. They decide to go and stop the kid from killing the guy, which will turn him crazy and kill Cable's family and all this fun stuff. And try and get Colossus, and they do the say anything gag where he's holding the stereo over his head. And so we have move into our final climax of the movie. Tons of great stuff in here as you get this fight between Juggernaut and Colossus, and they play it for all the kind of big wrestling moves of these two big gigantic guys and breaking, snapping fingers and stuff and all of it. Tons of fun kind of stuff happening in there. You get Cable and Deadpool sparring off against this gigantic crowd of orderlies at this evil mutant orphanage or whatever. I keep calling it evil mutant orphanage. I don't remember what it was called in the movie, but fun, all kinds of action in there. And then one of the great ones is Domino goes inside. And she's like, oh, I was raised here. And they have that sequence that kind of plays out where she's, I don't remember exactly where she goes into the room where all the kids are there and kind of fighting some guys, and she's taking them out, and then all the luck plays out in her direction, and this guy gets just brutally killed with his head getting smashed and stuff because of her luck. Those are the things about the action that I loved, that they found a way to be like fun, like have these gross out violent moments that are just clever in the way that it plays out. So we move into our kind of final section of it. And Cable's like, you're out of time. You couldn't convince him, and he's going to try and shoot the kid. The kid's not turning. He's all messed up. And so then Deadpool decides to sacrifice himself, jumping in front of the bullet to save the kid so he won't do evil things. The kid sees this, and it softens his heart. And so then and he put the necklace on, so that's why he could die from this. So it kind of plays out. The teddy bear comes back, he starts being charred, and so Cable knows that all his kid's been saved. So as this played out, I kept having these thoughts of like, why doesn't Deadpool just kill that guy so the kid can't kill him? Like, why don't they just arrest him? Or like, why don't, there's all these other things that I think could happen in this moment. Like, is Cable about to use his one bullet? He's going to be the guy to kill the evil orderly? Like, what, couldn't you do something like that and say, hey, he was evil, but kid, we don't want you to get messed up like this. It seemed like there were some other options that could have played out there. So they go with the direction Deadpool sacrifices himself so that we can play out this theme that Deadpool's suicidal, that Deadpool's trying to save this kid, that Deadpool needs to make a change to make the kid's heart change. Okay, and thematically I get how it works. I didn't necessarily think that it's an earned moment necessarily. It seemed like a screenwriter wrote it type moment. So then it goes into another one of these moments that, and by moment, I mean like 5-minute long scene where Deadpool's dying and giving all these dying moments. And once again, they go for the 11 option where they just keep playing the joke out for so long that I'm not sure if that's like that makes the joke brilliant or if it's like, okay, you're just trying too hard at a certain point in time. I don't know. Second viewing once again, same sorts of thoughts. I was laughing, grinning. I was like, is it too much? I just don't really know. And the whole time you're watching it and you go, oh, Cable's gonna have a change. He has 2 charges. Okay, I know where this is gonna head. And so then it plays out, kind of rewinds backwards. You see him kind of put the thing in his pocket. So it plays out. He shoots the coin instead of shooting Deadpool. Seems a little bit screenwritery in the way that plays out as well as if Deadpool doesn't die, if Deadpool's like was saved, it seems a little bit like would the kid's heart still be changed? Like it doesn't seem like this would seems like screenwriter magic making this tie out because there's not an actual sacrifice with the way this played out. And the kid didn't relive all of this. The kid just saw this play out very differently. So I get what they're trying to do. I'm not quite sure that it entirely works. And so then they're walking off and we're having kind of our final moment here. And the evil headmaster guy kind of runs out and we get this final payoff joke as the car jumps out. This set up so nicely throughout the entire movie that he wants to kill someone. We've got a character that we know needs to be killed off. Someone's going to kill him. What are we going to do? The car kind of comes out of nowhere, takes the guy out, and Deadpool's like, oh, I heard you coming. Fun little moment to kind of note to end things on. And so then from there, of course, the last thing you got to talk about with this movie is that we go into the end of the movie and we get these mid-credit sequences where you see that they take the time travel device and put a charge in it. So then Deadpool takes it and goes back in time, saves Vanessa, saves Peter, which right off the bat you're going, is this canon? Did this just undo the entire movie? Like other movies, I wouldn't be okay with that. But a Deadpool movie, it's meant to be irreverent, send up the genre, do things like this. So like, I'm not going to be mad that Deadpool screwed around with canon the way I would be with a normal movie. But is it canon? Like, is she back in the next movie? Is Peter back? Like, and even on a like story level wise, if you save Vanessa in that moment, how does the Peter stuff still happen? Like, I'm not quite sure. Like the timeline's already changed, so I'm not quite sure this makes. We're putting fun scenes in here that people want to see, but I don't know what does it mean for the story. And then, of course, the one that's amazing is that it plays out. Hugh Jackman standing there from X-Men Origins Wolverine, the monstrosity thing that was Deadpool in that movie walks up, and then you see Deadpool kill him, and it's amazing. Like it's just, I just laugh out loud. Yes, you're making fun of yourself. You're picking on your own franchise. This is the brilliance that is this one. And you found a way to be able to do it that I don't, once again, know how continuity-wise this ties into it, but that's the fun of Deadpool, that you can just do insane things and it works. So there you have it. We're at about 45 minutes on this one. I think those are my thoughts on the movie. That maybe I had some other stuff in there that I forgot to leave out, but at 45 minutes, I think you guys have gotten enough of me talking about Deadpool 2. So hopefully you guys enjoy me doing these long form ones where I give my full thoughts, walk through it, commentary. I got a really strong response on my Infinity War one, so hopefully this one will likewise have people will enjoy this as well. Let me know down below if you want me to keep doing this. I plan on doing no matter what for Solo next weekend as well, and then depending on how that one goes, I'll continue with the blockbusters that kind of come out in June and July. Let me know down below. There you have it. I did it. I think I did this one in one take. I have not cut it. Like, this has all been one straightforward deal. which I also was able to do that with my Infinity War one until I got to this point in time and I was about to transition to my normal ending, and then I botched it as soon as I said, and hopefully I'll get this one right. If you're new to my channel, please consider clicking that subscribe button. I do movie reviews, TV reviews, ranking videos, but the key thing is I don't want to just talk about movies. I want to talk about movies with you. So join me down in the comment section. Let's have a lively conversation about Deadpool 2 where you can talk about whatever you want to talk about. I did it. I pulled it off. This video is, in fact, one take with no cuts inside the middle of this one. Thank you for watching this very long video and making it all the way to this end where I kind of almost fourth wall break like Deadpool and talk about the production and the creation of this video. And that's it. That's what I got. I don't have a good ending. I just decided to riff something right there that I thought was a nice tie-in. But once again, thank you for watching.